Welcome back to Track from Scratch, where I cover the full production process of a vocal techno track. In the last two episodes, we covered the kick and bass, and then moved on to the percussion, completely rebuilding the idea that I already have from the ground up. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the synths and the vocals, rebuilding the melody that I have, as well as adding the vocals back into the idea, and going over all of the processing as well. This is all to catch you guys up on the idea that I already have so far, and then we've got this episode and the next episode covering the effects before we start charging ahead, fleshing the track out and getting it finished. So in this episode, let's jump into the synths and vocals. Back in the project, this is what we've got so far with the kick, bass and percussion. So the idea is really starting to take shape here. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at the synths and vocals group, starting with the synths. Not a whole lot going on in the synths at the moment, but as we start to actually build the track, we're going to be adding more and more stuff into this group here. This is just to get us started with a nice basic idea. So we got this acid stab here. It'll actually sound a fair bit different without the processing versus with it. So just a nice simple acid stab that I made in Serum 2, but of course you can actually make this just using Ableton stock plugins. So even if you just wanted to use, for everyone that's using standard and suite, you can chuck analog on, use this exact same MIDI. So right now it sounds like that. So you want to go into the oscillator, make sure it's on the saw wave here. Then we'll go into the filter section. We only need to use one oscillator, so we can turn the second one off. And then with the filter section, we want this envelope on the filter. We'll just bring this all the way down, and then we'll bring the frequency down, and then we'll bring the resonance up. We want to get some sounding somewhat similar to this. So we're starting to get the sound there. We also want this to be a pluck, so we can go into the amp section here. You just click on any of the gray sections there, and we'll just make that a little pluck. And then this is just a little bit too long. Oh, we also don't need any release. Maybe just a little bit. And then turn the release. Turn the release down on that, on the amp as well. Okay, so I think this is the amount. So yeah, about there, and then we can dial this in. Then what we want to do is add some overdrive to this sound to get that distorted tone that we've got with the original. Turn the tone up a little bit. Depending on how distorted you want it, you can turn the drive up or down. Maybe we'll back it off a little bit. And yeah, we'll turn that up to like 60. Not sounding exactly the same, but getting that same idea. It's basically just an envelope on the filter here, and then you just crank the resonance up to get that acid-like sound. So that's getting us a little bit closer actually. And then what we can do, okay, so we can add some unison as well. So I'll turn the detune up. So that's kind of adding some width. So when you click on turn unison on, just in this panel here, we'll turn that up to 4. And yeah, that should be about it. And then we can add the rest of the processing on. So I'll go through what this processing is doing, but that's how you would get this basic Serum preset just in Ableton. So just the analog with those settings there, and then a bit of overdrive. I've just reduced the bandwidth and like put it sort of in the low mids of the sound rather than brightening the sound up. And then just messed around with the settings a little bit just to get that nice distorted tone. And then you can bring the, if you want to get it closer to what I've got in the Serum patch, you can bring the frequency down. So that's how you get that. And then, yeah, we can just get rid of that for now. But if that's what you wanted to add, the same as mine, then that's how you would do it just within Ableton. So that's that. Turned all the processing off. And with the acid stab, it's just on the offbeat there. So it's just like kick, and then that acid stab happens instantly. And then that's just every 2 bars within the drop. So for our idea, it's just 4 bars long. So I'm just going to copy that and paste that there. And in the MIDI, it's just playing on the root note, so E1, so just any E note. So yeah, pretty standard acid stuff. And then for processing on that one, I've got OTT. I just like to chuck that on acid sounds because it really like flattens out the sound and often makes it sound a little bit more aggressive to me anyway. Obviously adding that distortion will add a little bit of aggression, but the OTT just really helps the sound like shine. So just adding a little bit of brightness, probably not heavy settings. Can use the Ableton OTT, but the X for Records OTT is free as well that you can get off their website, and they both do the same thing. It's just on the Ableton one, it would be amount rather than depth. Not super high depth, and then all the other settings are just stock settings. And then with Pro Q4, just got some shaping here, so cutting out all the low end and then just sort of boosting that nice like resonant frequency that we already had within the acid sound, so without it. So obviously taking out a lot of that low end kind of does kill the sound, but we want it to play nicely over the top of the kick and bass. We don't want it to interfere. So with the kick and bass going at the same time, it obviously fits in a lot better. So I'll unsolo that. Versus just like really attacks the, or like clashes with the bass, I should say. So we'll turn that back on. And then I've just added some Cathedral reverb, which is just an Ableton reverb preset. So on the standard Ableton reverb that comes with all versions, just Cathedral. And then usually the decay is 5 seconds, so I turned it down a little bit. And the dry wet is down to 30% because its default is 100 with this preset. Without. So just adding a little bit of depth to the sound, like placing it a little further back in the mix, just so it's not so dry and upfront. And then just some ping pong delay as well, so set to every half beat delay, and then just played around with the filter a little bit and not too much feedback, so it only repeats a couple of times, and then a little bit of dry wet there. So that's just adding a little bit of atmosphere to the whole idea. And then I've just got a Spire preset here, but it's just a very simple pluck synth and very basic melody going on here. If we click on here, it's basically just E, the root note, and then the seventh of the scale, which is D. So going from D to E, just like in a kind of rhythmic pattern. So that would just be, so yeah, that's 2 bars long as well. So we'll make it 2-bar MIDI. Again, Command-Shift-M to create a MIDI track once you've highlighted the section, and we'll grab that. So it's just D, E, and then I think I'm playing it in that range there. I think that's D and E4. Just very short notes. So this is actually a lead. So if I hold that down, it's going to play for as long as I hold it down for, but I'm just using it as more of a pluck sound. And then to get that, I just drew in like random D, E. So we can even just like change the rhythm up a little bit and do that. Maybe that. Adding a little bit more, and then I've added in a delay as well to fill in like any gaps that are left behind. So you can just like play around with that. You can add extra notes as well, just any of the purple notes, as long as you've set your key to be the key of the track. But I'm just going to use the original MIDI that I've got here. It just fits the rhythm a little bit better. But yeah, that's just like a perfect example of how you can just like mess around with even just 2 notes, and then it adds a lot. So without any processing, it sounds like this. And I'll show you guys how to make a sound like that really quickly as well, just using analog again, almost exactly the same as how we made the acid stab, just like slightly different settings on the envelopes. So we'll just this MIDI down here and we'll start shaping that sound just a little bit. So this is going to be a super simple pluck sound. Maybe change it to a square wave because then it just has a little bit more oomph to it, a little bit more body. You can turn this frequency down a little bit. It's already got a little bit of the envelope applied, so that's probably going to sound fine. And then we just want the attack on the amp to be at 0. Then we can make that a pluck as well. And you basically almost got the sound there. Maybe we'll open this a little bit. Has this got attack on it? Yeah, we'll turn the attack all the... Oh, okay, 5 milliseconds is the lowest. There we go, that's good. Maybe we'll turn the resonance up a little bit. And then, of course, we don't want that release on there, so... Then to get that sounding closer to the preset as well, we can just add a reverb preset. So we'll just go even with Cathedral again. It's just that one. It's just called Cathedral, not any of those other ones. And then we can turn that down a little bit and turn the decay down a little bit. And then we'll just add some delay on there as well, just to fill in the gaps. Ping pong delay, mess around with the filter there. I'll just leave it on every third quarter note. Actually, I might set it to every second, every half beat, I should say. So what we've got is this one. I'll turn this off. And then we've got... Then you could even just chuck some saturator on there as well, just to bring it up a little bit. So you don't actually need to worry about gain matching this time because we actually want the drive, the volume increase. We'll actually drive it a little bit and then maybe we'll turn the output down. And that's a nice substitute to the Spire preset. Then, of course, you can just shape it further by moving the frequency around a little bit and even chucking an EQ8 on there and then just shaping the sound just a little bit to get it closer to what I've got, or you can leave it as is. This one's just a little bit brighter, so it'll just change the overall sound a little bit, but that's that. And then let's go through a bit of the processing here. What I did when I remade that preset with analog is I basically just added in effects that you would find within Spire. So Spire has its own built-in delay and reverb that are baked into that preset that I was using. But then within Ableton, the synths that Ableton includes are pretty much just the oscillator and then a filter, so they can come out quite dry sounding. So that's why you always want to add like a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay, maybe like a phaser or something like that, just to add a little bit more movement to the sound. But with this particular preset, I've just got OTT on there, doing a similar thing to what it was doing with the acid sound, just brightening the sound up a little bit. So without it, got this. And then with it. So actually just brightening up the high mids, not the super high frequencies. OTT is just going to affect different sounds slightly differently, but once you start like popping it on a couple of different things, even like basses and stuff like that, then you start to sort of work out how it works and what it's going to do to each sound. So that's just doing exactly what I wanted. And then you can also mess around with the time as well, which is what I've done here. So if you turn the time up, it kind of like reduces the amount that it kind of squashes the sound by and becomes a little bit more lenient on the sound. Then I've just got a phaser on here, just adding a little bit of movement, very slight movement. You can hear that kind of whooshy movement there. Then I've just added another delay on top of the delay that's already in Spire. So that's just a standard ping pong delay. So just really filling in those gaps in between each hit, especially like here where there's sort of nothing going on there. You can fill that in with a little bit of delayed signal. Then Pro Q3, just brightening the sound up a little bit and high passing. So that'll just help it stick out in the mix a little bit better. And then just saturator, just driving the sound very lightly. So analog clip, so I can just drive it and then bring it down the same amount that I'm driving it. And then that'll add a little bit of extra warmth to the sound. You can hear the sound just gets a little bit more energy from that. Cool. So now we can move on to the vocals, and disaster strikes, you guys. So I was halfway through editing the video, and then I literally watched myself within the video change the sample rate in Ableton, and that completely disabled all the audio for the second half of that video that you were just watching. So now I'm here 6 weeks after that video re-recording the entire vocal section because all the audio for that got cut off and I never checked it when I recorded it. So let's jump back in. So I just got these vocals off of Splice. I think I literally searched up techno vocals and it was like the first or second thing that came up. Probably already been used in a million songs, but here's 1,000,001. Let's give them a quick listen.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door. You can see me either or.
Then it kind of just loops over from there. Go through what's going on with the vocals really quickly. I have barely done anything apart from warp them, except this project's 126, the vocals are 126, so they're already going to fit in anyway. I don't know why I've actually warped them, but quick warping tutorial if you're ever unsure. Just look at the file name and usually the BPM's right there, so 126 there. And then all you want to do is click warp here. Make sure the audio clip is at the start, and then you can just click on warp here, and then you just want to type in that original BPM that's in the file name there. And then that will set everything to the BPM of your track. So I can change this now and those vocals stay exactly the same.
Don't call me cause I'll call you.
So that's them at 163 BPM. Only other thing I did was added this little bit here, which I'm going to keep in the original track as well. I'm not going to copy that over into the rebuilt part because I can add that in once I start laying down the structure of the entire track. But this is just a little quarter beat chop of the first word in the vocals, and then all you have to do is highlight that, hold down Option, drag that there, maybe just add a little fade on the end just to keep everything sounding nice and avoid any sort of clicks. And you can just duplicate that over there. But that's not what we're doing right here. So I'm just going to undo that because I think there might have been some automations there as well. We're just using the original vocals for now. So I'll just grab the vocals from this second half here. Copy that and I'll pop that there.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes.
So yeah, not a whole lot going on with the vocals, but of course there's plenty of processing, which I'll go through one by one. So I'll turn everything off. Give it a quick listen without anything on there.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door. You can see me either or.
So first up, I've got auto shift. I'm not actually using the auto tune section of it. I'm just using this formant section here, dropping the formant by -30%. And what the formant will do is kind of change that sort of more feminine sounding voice and make it into a more of a masculine sounding voice. It doesn't actually change the pitch. It kind of just reshifts certain frequencies to kind of make it sound deeper rather than lower in pitch. So if we give that a listen without.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door. You can see me either or.
So it's actually still playing the same kind of vocal melody, even though it's a simple vocal melody, and playing the same notes, it's just deeper. Next, I just got the chorus. The chorus is just adding a little bit of width and movement to the vocals. Basically, a chorus just, in this case with the Ableton chorus, splits the sound into 3, and you'll have the original signal and then 2 sounds that are going up and down in pitch as the sound continues through. And then you can make that more or less exaggerated with the feedback and the amount. So the amount controls how much they go up and down in pitch, and the feedback is kind of like how can I describe it? Like I guess the intensity, using fairly light settings, especially with the dry wet all the way down, just to get like a little bit of width to the sound, but not like completely like blowing it out into the stereo field.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door. You can't see me either or.
I also like using the chorus to just add a little kind of robotic element, especially if you turn that feedback all the way down and then turn the amount up and then just mess around with the rate a little bit. That can add like this cool robotic quality to vocals and synths as well. Next, I got Pro Q4. So that's just dipping this high frequency a fair bit and then just boosting those mids. So giving the vocals a little bit more presence in the mix. And then obviously that high frequency dip came in probably from adding the auto shift. It's probably like shifted some certain frequencies that might have sounded nice up here, but then have come down into that kind of ear piercing, like 2.5, 3K range that I just needed to drop those down a little bit. So we can actually check that if I turn this off.
Don't call me cause I call
you can see there's that stuff going on
like
up
two
there.
left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door.
And then, yeah, when I turn the auto shift on, it's basically pushing that peak down into that kind of a little bit more scratchy range. So I just wanted to dip that with the Pro Q4 so we can listen to that without.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door. You can't see me either or.
So just taking out that kind of kind of sound in the vocals and then just making them sound a little bit more darker as well, which is the vibe I'm going for with this track. Next, the 1176, just to kind of catch the peaks, a very fast compressor. I actually have it on the slower setting, but it's still like on the slower settings, the attack is working within like microseconds rather than like milliseconds. So I actually learnt quite recently. But yeah, this just helps like catch the kind of more intense peaks of the vocals and just smooths them out a little bit.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door. You can't see me either or. Don't call me cause
of course, you can just replace this with the Ableton compressor and just turn the attack all the way down and then just mess around with the release a little bit just to either keep a bit of fullness to the sound, or if you turn the release all the way up, then you can really like smooth and even the sound out. Next, just the Ableton delay, just to adding a little bit of dimension to the sound.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two.
Always on ping pong mode, of course. Then I've got kickstart and then just a final Pro Q4 just to shape the sound. So properly shape that sound. This is kind of just adjusting certain frequencies. And then I've got that final Pro Q4 to really place the sound within the mix. So I'll give that a play without.
Don't call me cause I'll call you. You've been wrong like two left shoes. Close the blinds and shut the door. You can't see me either or.
And on Pro Q4, I'm actually using the spectral setting. So that's really, really super precise where you set that frequency band. And it's just like dipping very specific frequencies when they reach a certain threshold. Unfortunately, you can't use that setting within the Ableton EQ8, but you'll still just be able to easily get away with just using a normal dip and just bringing that down a little bit more. I just like the precision of Pro Q4, but definitely not necessary. Then just boosting back up that high frequency a little bit just to give the vocals a little bit of presence, just taking it out here before it goes into the compressor and then bringing it back a little bit with that Pro Q4, just so they're not too dark and dull in the mix. Then boosting the super high frequencies just to give them a little bit of brightness and crispiness. And of course, taking out the low end just because we don't need any of that low end stuff in the vocals because that's where our kick and bass is. So within the mix. Cool. So in the next episode, we're going to be going on to the effects and sweeps, which are already in here. But in the next episode, you're going to be jumping back 6 weeks in time to where I didn't mess up the recording. And then we'll be adding those back in. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys.